Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. A rising trend allows 911 dispatchers to work remotely, even from home, instead of in a call center. It comes as 911 centers struggle to recruit workers. Some are wondering if this could be a solution to that problem here in our state. WRAL Investigates Sarah Krueger met a man doing this in North Carolina while taking calls from the other side of the U.S. Sarah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So in your story, you talked to Conrad Shadel. Am I saying that right?
You are, yes.
Okay. And he lives in Person County, but takes calls outside of our state. How did you meet him?
Yeah, so this is just another example of word of mouth and the WRAL team working together. So this is actually something one of our producers heard about. She knows someone who knows Shadel. And so this producer pitched it to me as, hey, I think this could be a story. And I said, yeah, definitely, I agree. And so the connection happened from there, and we pursued the story, and the rest is history.
And so as you were talking to him, you guys made plans, obviously, for you to come see his workspace. So walk us through that and kind of what stood out to you about the place that he takes these calls from.
Yeah, so he is working from a co-working space in Roxborough in Person County. And so it's just, an unassuming building. You would not assume that there is someone inside of there answering 911 calls, much less answering 911 calls all the way in the Pacific Northwest. So it was, just a, very unlikely place. And he and his family recently relocated from the Pacific Northwest. They don't have family here in North Carolina. They used to have family here. They've enjoyed vacationing here. And this ability to do remote working just opened up so many doors for him and his family. And they got to really decide where they want to live rather than letting the job dictate where they would live. And so they chose Person County. They recently moved out here, and eventually he does plan to work from home. It's just they moved so recently that internet is not yet set up at their house. But ultimately, that is the plan. But until then, he's working at a co-working space in Roxborough with a private office.
Okay, and the agency he works with, they're okay with him being on the other side of the country for this?
Yeah, they are. So they started doing this, he says, to better attract employees amid this ongoing shortage of dispatchers and call takers that we're seeing here. It's happening nationwide, too. And in fact, it's because this agency allows remote working that while he was still living in the Pacific Northwest, he started working for them, knowing down the line that remote ability might be something attractive to his family. And so that alone is what brought him to this job. And no, it doesn't seem like they're upset, at least from his perspective. That's just how they do things. And other coworkers of his are remote as well. So by all accounts from him, it's going really well. He did have, that time, several months in the office in person before moving remote. And that probably helped him, get acclimated and meet some of the coworkers and that kind of thing, which I'm sure was nice.
And how does the technology behind this work? Anytime I've ever been in one of these 911 call centers, it looks very complicated, all the different computers and systems they're using. So for him to set that up right now in the co-working space, eventually in his home, what goes into that?
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, 911 centers, I've been in some too in person. There's a lot of activity. You can just feel the urgency all around you. But for this, his setup looks much like it would in one of those centers. He has multiple screens all around him. He has his headset. He has, of course, his phone. But otherwise, it's a pretty simple setup. He has the same software that he would be using in the call center if he were working in person. He can see the same maps. He can see the same information in terms of where are the nearby units, the nearby, fire trucks or police or ambulance. And in terms of answer time or dispatch time, he says it's the same. There is no delay in terms of, him being so far away. That doesn't create any sort of time lag or anything like that. So the people who call into 911, I'm sure they have absolutely no idea where he is sitting, that he's in Person County so far away.
And you kind of talked about why his family wanted to come to North Carolina, but I just wonder, why would he want to continue to work for an agency somewhere else when there are so many agencies around here that need to hire people?
Yeah, I'm sure agencies around here would probably love to hire him. He has quite a lot of experience. And I asked him about that, and there were a couple of things. So, for one, he says the pay is better in the Pacific Northwest. You know, they did not adjust his pay when he moved across the country, and the pay rate is just simply better over there than it is here from the jobs that he's seen. And then also consistency. He said he was able to stay on the same retirement plan that he had been working toward. So that was attractive to him as well. So, with careers, he may ultimately decide he does want to make a change. But for right now, he said very happy where he is and, not feeling the pull from any local agencies.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break right there, and we'll be right back. Sarah, before the break, we were kind of getting into Conrad Shadel and his experience working as sort of a remote 911 operator. In your story, you kind of go through the numbers of 911 vacancies in Raleigh, Fayetteville, Durham, and we've been covering these kind of vacancies for a while now. But why is it so hard to find telecommunicators?
Yeah, so I've done stories, on this issue for absolutely years. And in doing those stories, have talked with some current and former call takers and dispatchers. And anecdotally hearing from them, they always bring up two things. It's the pay and it's the stress. So they feel like they're not compensated well enough for how tough the job is that they're doing, especially when you consider that it really takes an emotional toll. They're talking to people in some of the worst moments of their lives, on the worst days of their lives. And so that can just add stress, to them personally. And then it's really all compounded by not having enough coworkers to share the load. So because there are staffing shortages, it's sort of just become a cycle. They're working long hours to make sure all the shifts are covered. And so that can just make it harder for them to feel rested and, harder in the sense that they're just getting all of these emotional calls with not as much of a break as they might like. And that just makes it harder to have longevity in the position.
Okay. Let's take Shadel for an example here. Of course, he is living in North Carolina, but taking calls in the Pacific Northwest. Let's flip that for a second. Right now, if someone who was living outside of North Carolina but wanted to do 911 calls in our state, is that something that is doable right now?
So, yeah, it's unclear. So I asked the state 911 board about that, and they said that personnel decisions are up to the individual jurisdictions, the counties, and the local government entities. So we are not aware of any agencies in North Carolina, any 911 agencies that do allow that type of remote working. But certainly, it's something that I have asked around to different local cities, and I'm waiting to hear back from some of them still. But I talked to Durham's mayor, and he said it's an option that he's interested in exploring down the line. We've had a lot of issues with staffing at Durham's 911 center, but at this point, he said there are privacy concerns, there are network security concerns about having someone answer these calls off-site. And so for now, it's not an option on the table in Durham, but it's something that at least the mayor is interested in exploring down the line. And I think I'll be curious to hear what I do hear back from the other cities. I'll make sure that's in our online story so you all can read about that and what they say. But for now, it seems like it is, certainly not imminent and perhaps quite far off for North Carolina.
Gotcha. And it sounds like for that to start happening, it would just be sort of maybe answering some of those question marks that people like the Durham mayor have.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anything preventing it from happening here on a broad scale. The 911 board definitely didn't give any sense of that. Just, hey, this is out of our control. It's up to the local government. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. If you've listened to this podcast on WRAL.com or on the WRAL News app, you can also find it in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Thanks for listening.